Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to episode 74 of the Daily Manchester City podcast on the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network giving you exclusive news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's and fantasy football, every club, every day. Over the course of the past few months, anyone listening might have become accustomed to Keelin's rants or our general exasperation from what we were seeing from City on the pitch. Today is not that day. Pep Guardiola's side easily dispatched Carabao Cup finalist Newcastle United 4-0, thanks to a statement and crowning hat-trick for the new Egyptian king, Omar Marmoush. Omar Marmouche is the name. What a performance. What a signing. What a player. Keelin, just initially, give us some thoughts and feelings about City's new main man, not about my singing, but about the new main man and that performance.
Yeah, no offense, Jools. You know I love you, but the less said about that, the much, much better. Omar Marmouche, on the other hand, is my favourite Egyptian to ever exist. What a brilliant, brilliant performance from Man City's new number 7. I mean, I really don't know where to start with this, you know. I saw he was starting. Brilliant. Love to see that, of course. The first goal is just, the first goal is the best of the three. Ederson does what Ederson does. When he's not giving the ball to the opposition, he is pinging it 60 yards up the pitch to the feet of one of our players. Marmouche makes a brilliant run in behind. Newcastle's goalkeeper's off his line. Bang, lob, 1-0. We're in business, boys. You know, and then the second goal, he's just in the perfect position out wide to cut inside, fire in on the opposite angle, 2-0. And then the third goal, it's just striker's instinct, following the ball into the box, right into the middle of the net, 3-0. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better, show from Omar Marmouche. Erling Haaland himself would have been proud. He was very proud, and I was absolutely delighted because I'm no longer depressed. So thank you, Omar Marmouche.
Yeah, it was a truly spectacular performance. And clearly he's the best Egyptian in the Premier League already, as a certain other Egyptian hasn't scored a Premier League hat-trick since 2021. So it's not for everyone, is it, guys?
Ahmed El-Mohammadi, sorry, you've been overtaken.
Oh, that's what I was on about. Before the start of play, these two iconic Premier League sides could not be separated by points or even goal difference after 24 matches of the Premier League season. Lewis said in the preview, it really felt like a Champions League qualification 6-pointer. So the manner of the victory, securing 4th spot, and especially off the back of Chelsea losing to Brighton too, it feels big, doesn't it, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty huge. I mean, it's weird because against Newcastle, we have a pretty decent record. I mean, they always kind of beat us in the cups when we're facing them there, whether it's the EFL or the FA Cup. But in the league, we've actually got a really, really good record against Newcastle. I mean, going back, the last time they beat us in the league was 2019 in January, and that was at their ground, and it was only 2-1. So it was a pretty impressive performance all around. Not to say I was confident going into the fixture, because they're in pretty red-hot form at the moment. They've got the second best striker in the league in Alexander Isak. Whether you want to make the case that he's the best is up to you, but he's certainly one of the best players in the league. So they've been firing on all cylinders. I think that we've agreed on this podcast that Newcastle probably have the best midfield in the league. We saw it today, Bruno Guimaraes, when Joe Linton's fully fit, him in the midfield alongside Sandro Tonali is a pretty defensive and compact and pretty impressive midfield. That midfield was a joke because we completely outran it today, which is not something we've ever said at this point in any season. Well, particularly this season, our midfield does not outrun any midfield. But wow, Nico Gonzalez, you have changed my absolute life. And it was just a perfect day because there was 3 new signings making another performance at the Etihad, and they were all just fantastic. I mean, we've had experienced players in the mix with new, fresh, young players. And what really excited me more than the performances from the new signings was the experienced players in the side looked like experienced players. They didn't look past it. They didn't look like the legs had gone. They looked like they were experienced and helping the younger players and offering that great performance. So, I mean, it really was just a perfect day.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some more stats to back up just how good City have been against Newcastle over the past few years. So they haven't lost to Newcastle at home since the turn of the millennium, September 2000. I mentioned in the preview, that was, of course, at Main Road. Both teams were not owned by Middle Eastern billionaire regimes, and I'm pretty sure I was the only one from this podcast that was alive then. I don't know about when your birthday is, Jack, but it's there or thereabouts, isn't it? And I got some more updated head-to-head stats as well. Since 2006, City have only lost 3 times to Newcastle in the total of 40 games, 2 of which were in the League Cup, as you mentioned, Jack, including the 1-0 loss last season at St James's Park there. But that means the Sky Blues have dominated Newcastle in the Premier League. In the last 35 games played since 2006, City have won 28, drawn 6 and lost just once, scoring 93 now and conceding just 21 in that period. So that imperious run against the Magpies continued here, and with the amount of similarly impressive records City have faltered in maintaining this season, how pleased were you with the way the team applied themselves and what you saw, Keelin?
Oh, I couldn't have been any happier. It was night and day from the last episode that me and Jack recorded. Apologies again for the rants, ladies and gentlemen, but this is what this team does to me from time to time. But thankfully, no need for that today. Like you said, the midfield looked like a completely different midfield. Abdulkadir Kusanov is my new favorite defender. I joke that he gives me that Soviet bloc aggression, which every team needs. He's kind of like the regen of Alexander Kolarov, which this team has needed for a long time. And yeah, I thought he looked absolutely at home in the middle of that defence alongside John Stones, who once again had a brilliant game. Josko Vardiol is maybe my favourite fullback in the world at the moment. Rico Lewis didn't mess anything up, which is always nice. The midfield was brilliant. The attack, how good was Savinho? We haven't even mentioned Savinho. Lewis Hall is never going to want to see Savinho ever again. That is how good he was. There's a real star football player in Savinho. The potential is just seeping out of him. And when he puts it all together with the end product alongside the pace and the skill, my God, we might actually have a Riyad Mahrez regen.
Big claim. And we're going to get into a lot more of the individual performances, especially from some of the newer signings, after this short word from our new sponsor.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bionique, the world's most personalised supplements. Bionique provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bionique. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Manchester City podcast on the Global Sports Podcast Network. So let's get back into analysing City's 4-0 demolishing of the Magpies. And a lot of that was due to City's potent attack. And after this game, only Liverpool have scored more than City's 52 goals in the league so far this season, which suggests it's the defence that's been struggling for most of the campaign. And that would be true. The stats back it up. This is only the 10th clean sheet in all competitions for Pep's side, and remarkably just the 6th in the Premier League after 25 games, and only 10 teams in the league having kept less. Clean sheet intact here, though. How impressed were you with the defensive structure and the solidity required to keep one of the world's best in Isak quiet as a mouse today, Jack?
Well, first I'd like to just start out by saying it's frustrating because we could genuinely sit here and have a 10-15 minute segment on each single player's performance this game, because let's have it right. Every single player stepped up to the mark today. It was just beautiful all around. Like Keelin said earlier on, Josko Vardiol is just absolutely sublime, and he's gone a little bit under the radar these past few games because he's not done anything magnificent going forward, which is what we're usually talking about his performances for. But what he has done, he's had no clangers at all in the past few games, and you just saw what an absolutely magnificent footballer he is. On the ball, off the ball, he looks like a midfielder when he's playing in midfield. He looks like a pure defender when he's defending at the back. even the subtle movements that he was doing, where he wasn't making a tackle but just using his body to block these players off so other players can retain possession. It was so composed. He looked like a proper senior player, and we still forget that he's one of the youngest players in this side. He was fantastic today. Absolutely magnificent performance. I just absolutely love this partnership that we've got going on between John Stones and Abdulkader Kushinov. We've only seen it a few times this season, but you can really see this kind of mantle that Stones has accepted as a kind of mentor for Kushinov. Since that Chelsea game when he came in and in the first 3 minutes looked like his City career was going to be very short-lived, and after that played the rest of the game out fantastically. He's been brilliant since then. Against Leyton Orient, in what Jools describes as a easy dub for against the O's, something like that. I won't repeat that title. But he was great then, fantastic against them. Even got his kind of deflected goal, which kind of summed up his chaotic start to his City career. Kushinov was absolutely fantastic. John Stones, so professional, so experienced, really looked like the part today. And of course, Rico Lewis, who, like me and Keelin talked about on a previous episode, has been a little bit nervous recently. This was a game, if you remember us talking the other night, Keelin, where no teams are coming to us and are scared against playing us. Well, Newcastle really kind of sat back and looked like they were a little bit nervous against playing us. And that's the game where Rico Lewis comes into his own, because he starts to excel in his technical qualities. And we see, like we did today, what he's best at: progressing the ball up the field. He's extremely technical on the ball, very precise. His forward runs are brilliant. When he's defending, it leaves a little bit to be desired when we've got so much pressure on us. We didn't have that today. That entire back four kept some of the best attackers in Europe at the moment really quiet. I mean, John Stones and Abdulkader Kushinov did something that Gabriel and Saliba failed to do on 3 occasions this season, and keep Alexander Isak, Anthony Gordon quiet. It was really impressive. But for me, the standout player in that back line was actually someone who's come under a lot of criticism for us this season. We've all had our things to say about Edison, but wow, what a performance from him today. He has officially broken the record for the most assists from a goalkeeper in Premier League history. He's got 3 assists this campaign, the most of any goalkeeper in a single campaign. He's got the same amount of assists this season as a certain Martin Odegaard. It was just fantastic from him. He came clutch when he was required to step up and make a few saves. Not that he was very busy, but he dealt with what he was given by Newcastle. It was just a brilliant performance from him. He was so composed. His link-up play, he's brilliant. He's like the 12th man in the extra man in our build-up. Obviously, he's not an extra player on the pitch, but when we were playing with all of our fullbacks so far forward, we was almost operating with 2 centre-backs in that back line that were staying back. So having Edison so heavily involved in the build-up play is just absolutely crucial for how we play football. So I was really impressed with him in particular. The whole back line impressed me. That was a perfect defensive performance from us and a clean sheet to top it off.
Yeah, Edison, a more effective quarterback than Patrick Mahomes over the last week or so.
And I'm glad can Patrick Mahomes go and goal? This isn't even a discussion.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you've both highlighted specifically Kushinov, because, like you mentioned, that first 5 minutes from hell, and no, I'm not talking about being in an elevator with a Marseille player. It was terrible. But he managed to battle back that game, which I thought was impressive. And ever since, he's looked increasingly more comfortable. And this obviously his best showing so far. So excellent from him, and very promising partnership with John Stones emerging as well. City have now won 7 of the last 10 in all competitions, which a few months ago might have seemed a bit improbable, but we're back. And again, the scoring has just been exceptional. The Sky Blues have smashed in 37 goals in those 10 games. And simple math says that's nearly 4 a game, which is quite some going. So considering Haaland, Foden and now Marmouche have all been bagging them in, and Savinho developing and elevating his playmaking game alongside it, the attack's starting to look properly potent, isn't it, Keelin?
It is very much so, and I think what you're starting to see is something really gel and develop with the front line. You know, Omar Marmoush has come in and he's added such a dynamic ingredient to the attacking line. You know, as much as I love Jeremy Doku and I am a big fan as well of Jack Grealish, With Omar Marmouche, when he gets the ball at his feet, he only wants to do one thing, and that's get forward and beat whoever's marking him. And I think the biggest criticism we've always had of Jack Grealish, for example, is he's too pedestrian, and you know what he's going to try and do when he gets the ball. He's going to cut inside, try and feed it in the midfield, and basically be invisible for the rest of the move when the ball's away from him. With Omar Marmouche, he has his opponent on tenterhooks and he's got them on strings because they're so scared of hacking him down that he has that threat. He can go inside, he can go outside, he can play the ball in midfield and make a run, or he can keep the ball and get to the edge of the box himself. I just think Omar Marmouche, yes, it was a lot of money. I completely agree, but he's such a special part of this team going forward. You can see the vision when they're all there, and you can see the pieces coming together game by game by game. And last thing I'll say before we move on the topic of Kusanov, what I love about his partnership with John Stones at the back is that you've got the sort of Rolls Royce footballer and you've got the Dodge Hellcat in Kusanov. You've got the beast and you've got the refined. And I think any great defensive partnership has that. As much as I hate giving them any kind of credit at all, that's what Arsenal do so well. You've got the Rolls Royce and William Saliba, and you've got the sort of rough and tumble in Gabriel. With Liverpool, you've got Van Dijk, who's the Rolls Royce, and you've got Kanate, for example, who's the more physical sort of specimen. And I think if City can redevelop that dynamic, I think you've got something very, very special on your hands.
Yeah, I would agree. Recency bias is obviously going to be prevalent here after seeing such a good performance. But before the game, we spoke about how good on paper that front four was with Marmouche, Foden, Savinho, Haaland, and now we're speaking about Kusanov and Stones. This has to be the team going forward, right, Keelin?
Yeah, it does, absolutely. And especially with Real Madrid on the very immediate horizon, if you want to have even the remotest hope of getting something from this game, this has to be the team that goes there. Because, we saw in the home game against Madrid, if it wasn't for Haaland, nothing happens in that game. And I am the biggest Kevin De Bruyne fan you will ever find. De Bruyne has not been at it the last number of months. Admittedly, those are injuries, those are things that aren't in his control. But you have to put the best players that you have in the moment out there. And at the moment, Foden's starting to tick. Nico Gonzalez, absolutely incredible protecting that back forward today and patrolling the channel. These are the players that need to go to the Bernabeu and start. If you need to go and get a goal early, which you do, it needs to be Marmouche up alongside Haaland and Savinho, Foden just in behind dictating the play. Basically, to answer your question, yes, that's the team that needs to go there, and Kusanov needs to be given a chance as well.
Yeah, he's definitely earned that chance. And just on Marmouche, before we take another short break, he's given City something which is completely different, which is what you alluded to. He's the opposite of Grealish, but the number one thing that he has done, he keeps making runs in behind, which is stretching defences. That is where all of City's best players are in that space in between midfield and attack. And it was too clustered. It's been too clustered for months, which means Haaland's not getting any service. But Marmouche, if someone has got the ball, he is making that run in between defenders, in between centre-backs, in the gaps between the full-backs and the centre-backs, taking defenders where they don't want to go. And we've seen the rewards here. The amount of times he found space in this match was crazy, wasn't it, Keelin?
It was, absolutely. And the other point that I'll add, because you've made a really interesting point there, Jools. If you look at, for example, Omar Marmouche and the runs he makes, feeding the ball in and instantly darting in behind, who does that open up space for out wide? Josko Vardiol to whip in the ball, to play the ball along the side and get in behind as well. What happens is you've got a brilliant tandem threat in the wing, and that is what you are building with someone like Omar Marmouche. When Rodri's back, balls pinged over the top for someone like him to get that and to really feed off of that and to build the threat out wide. What do you think, Jack?
I'll just add this one thing onto both of your brilliant points, because really quick, how often have we faced with the issue the past few seasons of we play Erling Haaland up top, up front, and every team that we play against, Erling Haaland is occupied by all of their back line, if not both of their centre-backs every single game, With Omar Marmouche playing just behind him or just off the left or just off the right, he's making these runs. Defenders are thinking, right, who do I take on here? Do I leave Marmouche open for the run and keep an eye on Haaland, or do I leave Haaland, the most clinical striker in all of Europe at the moment, to go and mark this run? What do you do as a centre-back? You're faced with an impossible decision, because either way, you've got a world-class player on this side who's open, or a world-class player on this side who you're leaving open. So I think it's a really good sign of things to come with Omar Marmouche and Erling Haaland on the pitch together.
Yeah, so pick your poison. And ultimately, that is how goals are scored in football. A moment of disorganisation in defence and then capitalising on it. So having someone that will make those runs and disrupt the defensive structures like Marmouche, and the way he's so confident in his ball striking and everything, he just seems perfect for this City team, Keelin.
He is. And the big point to take away from this is, remember what makes City great and what makes City tick. City are usually at their best when they're in the first 5-10 minutes. They're dominating the ball, they're dominating the play, and usually with these runs from an Omar Marmouche type player, they score first, they get 1 or 2 goals, and then they force the opposition to come forward. They have to come out, because you can't just sit in a 2-0 loss. When it comes to teams digging in and man-marking Haaland and sort of just basically parking the bus, what you have to do, and what City are the best at when Rodri's fit, force them to come out, force them to attack, and then pick them apart in the counter-attack. And is there a player better built for counter-attack in football than Omar Marmouche? Can you imagine what him and Savinho are going to be like when Rodri's back and those balls are being played and teams are being torn to shreds through the lines? That is what you have to wait and see, because that is what the vision is going to be. Get the first goal, get the first couple of goals, let the opposition press you and press the issue, and then bang, hit them with the blitzkrieg. That has to be the way.
Yeah, and hopefully it will be. We'll be back after this short break.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we've spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and let me tell you, Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, then check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Manchester City podcast on the Global Sports Podcast Network. You both have brought up how good Nico Gonzalez was. He definitely needs his own segment, because I waited until now to bring it up, I guess, because we've talked about the midfield ad nauseum for what feels like an eternity. But Nico was slotted straight in and the team looks inconceivably different, and he has had a massive impact in that, you'd have to say. So let's give some flowers. Talk to me about St. Nico, Jack.
I mean, what's there to say? He's just, you watch him and I'm absolutely blown away. I mean, I thought that after that debut against Leyton Orient, when he got that contact injury, I thought it's just going to be another typical story of a City signing coming in, getting injured straight away. We're not going to see anything about him. No, he was rightly rested against Madrid. I thought I didn't want to rush him back for a game that, let's face it, was probably going to get away from us anyway. Although I do think that if he had started, he probably would have made the difference in controlling that game. But that type of control we definitely saw today against Newcastle. 112 touches, 98 accurate passes, the most in the game, 97 pass accuracy, the most in the game, 14 passes into the final third, 4 recoveries, 4 ground duels attempted, all of them won, 1 interception, 1 accurate long ball. When have we read off some stats like that about a player in our midfield at all this season? It's absolutely so refreshing. And it was, I know it seems a bit cliche to say, but it was genuinely like watching Rodri in our midfield. When we all heard these links about Nico Gonzalez signing for City, let's face it, none of us really had a clue who he was. We'd probably heard of him playing in the Portuguese league, but he wasn't the first name on anyone's list. But as such is the case, like we mentioned on that transfer pod actually, in recent years, we've missed out on our first choice targets, ended up having to sign our second or third choice targets. Ruben Diaz comes to mind, Emerick Laporte comes to mind. I remember we were going for Jules Koundé first in that one, and before that we were going for Koulibaly, ended up with Ruben Diaz. we missed out on some key targets. This season, Zubimendi, Bruno G ended up with Nico Gonzalez, and look how it's turning out for us, because that was a phenomenal performance. He was absolutely involved in every single aspect of the play. When we had these loose balls coming away in the midfield, any other game this season, we'd think, right, that's it, they're on a counter. But you blink, look away almost instinctively because you know they're going to be on the attack. But no, Nico Gonzalez has collected the ball with a brilliant tackle, or dodged his way past 2 or 3 players and played it out wonderfully. What impressed me the most was that his decision making was on point in every single aspect of his game. Every single time he got the ball, he made the right decision, whether it was to play it forward or whether it was to turn around and recycle and keep hold of possession. All it took was one midfielder, and the others look so much better. Ilkay Gundogan had one of his best games I've seen since he came back to City, because he didn't have the burden of having to track back and run and chase all these balls. That's not what Gundogan's going to do. He's 34 years old nearly. Like, having Nico Gonzalez got the best out of every single player in that team. One other player that I'll point out in that aspect who also had an impact was Erling Haaland's captain's performance. I feel like he elevated the level of every player. But Nico Gonzalez allowed us to play like Manchester City again. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that was brilliantly put. Those stats truly show a complete midfield performance. And yeah, maybe not like Rodri being on the pitch, but it's certainly the absence of him was felt a lot less. And that's as good a compliment as you can give a midfield player, considering Rodri is the gold standard. We will undoubtedly give what's coming up its own episode with a lot more analysis for such a huge game. But looking ahead, we couldn't really ask for much more going into that second leg at the Bernabeu, could we, Keelin? This momentum is so important.
Oh, absolutely. And especially after the, just falling apart that happened in the first leg, we needed belief and we needed some kind of energy going to Madrid. The other point that I'm going to make on a slight segue back to what Jack said about pivoting to other transfer targets. Always remember, ladies and gentlemen, the first top target for Man City wasn't Rodri, it was Jorginho. And Aurelio De Laurentiis' meanness meant we went and got Rodri instead. So always remember, even if you don't get the first target, it can actually work out much better in the long run. And what are your thoughts on that, Jack?
Well, I was just thinking, like, going on that performance that we saw from Nico, as he wants to be known now, today, you can really tell that he played a little bit further up in the midfield when he was playing in Portugal, because the intensity and the physicality that he displayed today was really that as it reminded me of a typical 8 performance, and you could tell that he played in that position back in Portugal with the display that he put out today, because he was just so aggressive, winning every single second ball. He just pace, power. It was electric. The energy that we had in midfield just allowed everything to tick in our way. And we've now started to, in recent years under Pep Guardiola, play with this double pivot. We saw it in our treble-winning season with Rodri and John Stones. When Rodri comes back next season, I can definitely see us getting so much success out of playing Rodri alongside Nico Gonzalez. They just look like, well, I'm obviously imagining things here, but they have to complement each other so well. They just look like they'll play brilliantly together, and I don't see Rodri coming back into the side and benching him. I think that Rodri will come back into the side and play alongside him. Do you agree, Keelin?
Yeah, I do actually, but I do have an interesting thought on this. I 100% see Nico Gonzalez being an 8 going forward
Yeah,
when Rodri's
absolutely.
back. And imagine, I mean, even if you have Rodri sitting at the base of midfield patrolling the channel, imagine having a player like Nico Gonzalez sweeping up alongside Rodri and players like Foden and De Bruyne being able to push further forward. That's the dream. And even if it's Rodri playing a single pivot on his own, Nico Gonzalez and Phil Foden as your other 2 8s. I mean, the possibilities that can be done with this midfield now, with one player being added, the combinations are endless. Thankfully, at least it won't involve Mateo Kovacic, God willing. But any other combination of 2 8s that you want to put together, now you can when Rodri's back. That sort of discipline and that positional awareness, it opens up so many different avenues for this team.
Yeah, it definitely does. Because that should be the requirement for a midfielder at Manchester City, someone that has the technical capabilities to progress the play and move forward. But if you're in any kind of defensive position, have the defensive capabilities too. And Pep seems to have gone to this double pivot while Rodri is out. It wasn't the case at the start. That's what he settled on now. So it'll be interesting if you could have a double pivot of Nico and Rodri when Rodri's back, and then you could allow the more forward-thinking players to start further up the pitch. But like you say, like you both said, Nico gives a lot more versatility and a lot more options for the midfield, which is what we've all been crying out for all season. So it was great to see. And that will about do it for our coverage of Manchester City's 4-0 win over Newcastle United. Stay tuned this week for the coverage of the massive second leg at the Bernabeu, where hopefully City can overturn that first leg defeat. I've been Jools Jordan Probert. Thank you to Jack Ward and Keelin McNamara for joining. We are the Daily Manchester City podcast on the Global Sports Podcast Network. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.